Pick up a rock right now, just an ordinary rock. Look at it for a second. To you, it's nothing, a paperweight at best, but 3.3 million years ago, that same rock, in the right hands, was the most advanced piece of technology on the entire planet. And here's what makes that almost impossible to believe. The humans who made it weren't even humans yet. Not in the way we think of ourselves. Their brains were smaller. They hadn't mastered fire. They couldn't speak in full sentences, if they could speak at all. And somehow, despite all of that, one of them picked up a stone, struck it against another stone at exactly the right angle, and created something the world had never seen before. A tool. So the real question isn't whether ancient humans made tools. We know they did. The question is how. How do you invent the very first tool in human history when there's no one to teach you, no example to copy, nothing to learn from at all? In 2015, archaeologists working in Kenya stumbled onto something that completely rewrote this story. At a site called Lomekwi 3, they found stone tools dated to 3.3 million years old. That number matters more than it sounds like it should. It pushed tool-making back 700,000 years earlier than anyone had predicted. And it meant the species responsible wasn't Homo habilis, the so-called handyman, long credited with inventing tools. It was something older, something that came before our own genus even existed. Now think about what that actually means. These weren't humans crafting tools with intention and foresight. They were something closer to upright apes working with brains roughly a third the size of yours, and they were already engineering. But here's where it gets interesting, because making a sharp stone tool isn't as simple as smashing two rocks together. Try it yourself and you'll mostly get dust, and maybe a bruised thumb. The real technique, something researchers now call knapping, requires understanding angles most people never think about. You need a stone with the right internal structure. You need to strike it at close to a specific angle, hard enough to fracture but controlled enough to direct that fracture exactly where you want it. Too steep, and the stone just crumbles. Too shallow, and nothing happens at all. So somewhere, millions of years ago, an early hominin discovered this angle. Not through instruction, not through trial across generations passed down by teachers, through pure isolated trial and error, alone, on a riverbank in East Africa, probably surrounded by nothing but the sound of stone striking stone, over and over, until one strike finally worked. And once it worked, everything changed. A sharp flake of stone could do something hands alone never could. It could cut through hide. It could slice meat off bone in seconds instead of hours of tearing with teeth. It could scrape fat from skins to make them usable. Suddenly, an animal carcass that used to feed a small group for a day could be processed efficiently enough to feed them for much longer. This is where the story takes a turn that most people don't expect. Because tools didn't just change what early humans could eat. There's strong evidence they changed what early humans could become. Around 2.6 million years ago, a new style of toolmaking emerged, known today as the Oldowan industry. Simple by modern standards, sharp-edged flakes struck from larger cores, but revolutionary at the time. And the timing lines up with something remarkable in the fossil record. Brain size in our ancestors began to increase, not gradually over millions of years like before, but at a noticeably faster pace. Researchers believe this wasn't a coincidence. Meat, made newly accessible through butchering tools, is incredibly calorie-dense compared to the tough plants our ancestors had relied on for millions of years. And brains are expensive organs. They demand enormous amounts of energy just to function. Some scientists now argue that without stone tools unlocking that extra nutrition, our brains might never have had the fuel to grow the way they did. In other words, a sharpened rock may have been one of the first steps toward becoming who we are today. But tool use didn't stop at simple flakes. As generations passed, the designs grew more refined. By around 1.76 million years ago, a new technology appeared, known as the Acheulean hand axe. Symmetrical, deliberately shaped on both sides, sometimes startlingly elegant for something made entirely from stone. And here's what's strange about it. Some of these hand axes show almost no signs of actual use. No wear marks from cutting or scraping, which has left archaeologists with a genuinely unsettling question. Why spend enormous time and skill crafting a tool you barely use? Some researchers now suspect certain hand axes weren't tools in the practical sense at all. They may have been symbols, evidence of skill, status, even an early form of self-expression, long before anything we'd recognize as art existed. If that's true, then somewhere in this story, ancient humans crossed an invisible line. They stopped making things purely to survive and started making things to be seen. Every smartphone, every skyscraper, every piece of modern engineering you've ever touched traces its origin back to that exact moment. A creature without language, without fire, without anything we'd call civilization, picked up a rock, struck it against another, and changed the future of an entire species. You're not separate from that moment. You're the result of it. Every tool you've ever held in your hand is a direct descendant of that first deliberate strike, echoing forward across 3 million years until it reached you.